Kyle, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, my apologies. Okay. Well, we're going to get started. Please let me know if I cut out or you can't hear me again. This is being recorded, so we will make this available to all of you and anyone who wasn't able to attend here shortly. So the topic of today's discussion is year-end cleanup, some of the deadlines that are coming, how the efforts are going to date. So we have Michelle Hostetler here who is going to review kind of the efforts and the deadlines and what is going on so far. And then the D365 support team is going to cover some of the purchase order cancellation process, specifically with product receipts. And then there's a number of inquiries and reports specifically around year-end activities that you can use to identify documents or purchase orders or invoices and potentially that we need to clean up, get out of the system, or finalize before year end. We'll have a chance in the middle once Michelle's done talking to ask her any questions. And then additionally, as we finish up with some of the inquiries and reports, if you have any questions related to that. Michelle, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. When you want me to go to the next slide, just give me a next and we'll go from there.
Sounds good, Kyle. Thanks. Good morning, everybody. Just going to kind of quickly go over some of the bigger deadlines. You all have that memo. I'm not going to reread it to you, but I just kind of wanted to point out some things. Those deadlines are for documents to be to the auditor's office. That's not the deadline for submitting, so make sure you get them to our office by these deadline dates. One of the big ones is the GBRs, your BR type GBRs. That's coming up pretty quick there at the early December on the 8th. And remember that for operating funds, those need to expire on or before the 31st of March. Because we are a tax collecting entity, we need to be sticking to our annual budgets, but because of our budget process can extend into February, finances ask that we allow those to be available for use until March 31st. But we do need a hard stop there at the 31st for using operating fund GBRs. And I did want to call out that those of you who have P cards, to include that in your year-end planning, to encumber funds to get you through your March 15th billing cycle on your P cards. So even though your GBR for your P card may not expire until 3/31, we pay the bills usually around 3/20. And so you're going to want to start using your new GBRs with your purchases beginning the 3/15 to April 15th billing cycle. So I just wanted to call that out. For internal bills, this is mostly for our departments who submit those recurring, so finance, for fleet, graphics, mail, and for DOT, you're going to want to get us those estimates by December 8th, and then we do need the final true-ups by January 9th. So for those of you who don't submit estimates, who do your internal billing based on pay periods, so for instance, land acquisition for the city attorney's office, design and construction, some of the labor capitalizations, anything that's for that very last bit of the year, those need to be in by January 9th. Otherwise, any internal bills for this year, try to get them to us by the 8th. We've extended the deadline for purchase orders this year one more week. So rather than purchase orders being at the same deadline as the GBRs, we've extended that to the 15th. But that leaves very little time for the PO approvers to get through all those and all the other cleanup that has to be done in our office. So try not to wait until the 15th, but we did give that extra week so we wouldn't have to, you guys wouldn't have to reach out asking for extensions. So we hope that that's helpful to you this year. GBR cancellation forms are due also by the 15th, as well as the asset disposition forms. So those would be directed to David or Sue. David Heil or Sue Odenweller will be who you send those asset disposition forms to, or you can always send them to the accounting and operations email as well, and they'll get to the right place. POs referencing an AC they can be submit, or they need to be to our office by the 18th. And we did that little bit of extra time because the last council meeting is on the 11th. Revenue and expenditure corrections, any of you who use custodial or agency funds where you need to transfer money from an agency fund to revenue, we need to have those in by the 20th. And then invoices, imports for invoices for those utilities, mileage, COAAA, we need to get those in by the 21st. Clearly, we want to pay as much as we can so that our financial statements are accurate, and we have to do less modification at the beginning of the year to identify those accruals. Fewer POs will roll, and that will speed up things for the year-end team working over New Year's weekend. And it just gives us the most accurate record. So try to pay as much as you can before that 12/21 deadline. Kyle, you want to hit the next slide? All right, so POs, we need you guys to work on the cancellation of your POs unless there's a valid reason for them to stay open. Unneeded POs are going to tie up your cash. They artificially inflate these cities' obligations, and they slow down system performance and year-end processes. So, just again, I know we talk to you guys about this all the time, but cancel your POs. And, with regards to your current year operating POs and GVRs, if you don't need them, cancel them so that you can free up those funds to use elsewhere. So, cancel early, cancel often. Whenever you find you don't need things. With GVRs, once they've expired, we go ahead and cancel them, but more often than not, regardless of when you plan to use them, you guys are just kind of out of routine putting 3/31 the following year for your end date. And we found that a lot of BRTEs, the travel didn't occur, or, people don't use their entire BRTE balances because, it's an estimate. And so there's all these small amounts just sitting out there on documents. So I highly recommend that if you're looking at a budget crunch and you need money, that you look at your outstanding encumbrances, because if you cancel them, that's going to free up your budget. And if you do it early, then you can re-encumber them prior to the GVR and PO cutoff. And then finally on 12/29 is when we expect to cut off and shut everybody out of the system at noon. And so your catalog purchases can go through noon on Friday, and then a reminder that the purchase requisitions, they either need to have the GBR removed and can stay out in the system, or they need to be deleted. But we can't have a pending PR that has a GBR attached to it, or it's going to cause errors during the year-end process, and it won't allow the GBR to roll. So I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of that. And then, as usual, your draft documents by 12/29, you need to have all of your draft invoices, your abandoned POs or invoices or GVRs, go ahead and get those deleted. Because everything, in order for us to process year end, we have to have everything has to be either paid or posted or confirmed. We can't have these things just hanging out there in these random statuses. Kyle, you want to go ahead and hit the next slide? Kyle? Kyle, slide. Thank you. Okay, so this one's just kind of a fun one for me because I just wanted to remind everyone that we're a pretty big organization, the city is, and the AP team is actually very small that has to approve all of these documents, whether they're GVRs or POs or invoices. They issue all the warrants. And so I just wanted to remind you that they prefer to approve, and so they would really like to have everything come through accurately. We don't give attaboys or bonuses for rejecting documents, and it's much easier to be able to approve documents than to reject them. And so I'm just going to go through a couple slides that kind of go over some of the most common reasons why documents are rejected that I've gotten feedback from the approvers on. So slide, Kyle. Thanks. Okay, so to get smooth invoice approvals, the first thing is make sure your invoice is attached and that they can see everything. That's going to really speed up approvals if you can have the remit and amount highlighted. They won't reject it if it's not, but it's very helpful to have that done. then the other thing is just to make sure that it's accurate, that what you've entered in D365 matches that invoice. So the remit address needs to match clearly the amount. The invoice date and invoice number should also be the same as what's on that invoice. And another thing is we talk about how we only pay current charges, and this is specifically to those kind of recurring monthly charges, for instance, your AT&T bills. And something I wanted to mention was that we do need to validate that any outstanding amounts due or credits that you check into. If you have a net credit due and you're paying current charges, there needs to be a note or something that explains that. I had a recent experience where someone had put through a payment for $500 and some, and yet we had a credit of that same amount. And when we questioned it, the user who submitted it just said, oh, yeah, it's an error on AT&T's part. But when I went and dug into the GL string for that department, I found that that invoice had actually been paid twice, once on the 7th of the month and once on the 8th, and there was a typo in the invoice number. So this is why, a good reason why we really want good invoice numbers entered accurately, because it'll help prevent duplicate payments like that. And then secondly, drilling into that, it was like, no, that credit is actually due to us, and they were able to not pay the bill that month. So just, pay attention to if something hits your account that shouldn't be as well. Like a lot of times AT&T might misapply a payment. That means somebody else is showing up as a pass-through on their account. So look into those whenever you have carry forward balances other than that typical timing difference, which is why we usually would only pay current charges, right? Because you've submitted in late February your payment, and now you're paying in March, and by the time you get that bill, that February payment hasn't been applied. So we do want to stick to current charges, but we also need to make sure that we're looking at what's going on in any carry forward credits or balances. With very few exceptions, we do expect itemized vendor provided invoices. I know that there's construction invoices that are kind of generated by systems and certain grants. They may not have, an invoice proper. It might be a copy of the grant agreement or whatever, but there definitely needs to be support. And the best business practice is to have that vendor provide a invoice. Also with invoice approvals, if there's an outlier or something that's an exception to the standard operating procedures, make a note for the approvers, because they can escalate that to a supervisor rather than reject it. Sometimes there might be something that's a real outlier that you pay maybe once a year. And almost all of our AP staff has been with us less than 2 years. So there's a big learning curve whenever we're dealing with 50 plus divisions out there. You guys all operate differently and you have different business needs. So just make a note for them, but do it in the attachments rather than the workflow notes, because I feel like those are more apparent to the approvers. So just to let you know there. Kyle, you want to go and get the slide? And then talking about PO approvals, one of the biggest is using the correct reason code. That reason code drives the routing and the approvals. And the approvals are required by our purchasing code. So if you're rejected in a PO because of the reason code, you need to recall it and not just hit resubmit. Because when you hit resubmit, it just bounces it back to the auditors and it does not reroute your PO. So I just wanted to call that out. I understand that that's happening a lot. And I could see why it would, because people say you need to resubmit this invoice. So you're like, okay, I'm going to hit the resubmit button, but it's actually you need to recall and then submit again rather than resubmit. So we're going to try to get them to change their verbiage as well and their rejections if they're using the resubmit language. Matching policy is another reason why purchase orders will get rejected. The matching policy on POs actually defaults from the procurement category that you've selected. And so you might want to check and correct those when needed in the line setup tab, because if a PO, anytime a PO has indefinite quantity, meaning the quantity is your actual number of dollars, right, and your unit price is $1, in those cases, the PO should never be a three-way match. Also, goods should always be three-way match. You should always be entering a receipt when you purchase goods, and they should be at the item, unit price, and quantity. And then services and grants almost always should be two-way match. Few exceptions, like if you do, you know, a exterminator service or something that's the same price, or security service, it's $35.99 a month. You set up your PO at 12 units, unit of measures a month, $35.99 is your unit price. Those you could, if you wanted to, set those up as three-way match and enter receipts for, but you don't have to. But in general, services should always be two-way match. Every line needs to have a quantity unit price. Sometimes we have to reject because one of those components is missing. PO amount should never be more than is shown on the contract and or has been legislated. So we've had quite a few, it seems like lately, where the legislation says the PO is $500,000, but then the PO is submitted for $510,000. So whether it's a typo or something changed in between, they can't approve the PO for more than is legislated. Main accounts. Main accounts are pretty important because aside from just for your budget and for classifying expenditures correctly, 1099 reporting is driven by main accounts. And so that can be why we are really sticklers about using the correct main account, especially if, you know, you accidentally code a service as a good, because then it won't get that 1099 reporting, plus it's classified wrong. So just watch and look for the most appropriate main account whenever you're setting up purchase orders. And then POs should be linked to their RFQ or bid if they have one. And so it's my understanding that there's some issues with that in the system. And so if the system doesn't link it correctly, that's fine. But if you could include an explanation in the notes noting that actual correct RFQ and bid number, then that will keep your PO from being rejected, because the PO approvers don't have the information that they need to go back and look at the RFQ and bid if the wrong one is referenced on the PO. Slide, Kyle. Okay, so just a little bit about grants and AR. You're going to want to review those expenditures and submit your corrections by the deadline. Remember that crossing years and crossing funds requires legislation, as well as additional adjusting entries for the ACFR and potentially notes to the financial statements. So as much as you can make sure that your expenditures have been classified and booked to the correct place before we cut off for your end is ideal. Close any that need to be closed, and then just a reminder that I'll be sending out the CFA and subrecipient information in early January, and we do need a pretty quick turnaround on that because the auditors have to get started. And unlike the interim, when I sent out and said, hey, if you have any material changes, let me know, because it was just for their prep work, the CFA in January, we will need a response from everyone confirming that you've reviewed and corrected anything that needs to be corrected on that data. With regards to accounts receivable, that email will be sent out soon by me. I usually send that out in early December. And that's also due back very early in January, but I send it out in December so you can start getting it together, because, you know, you could get it basically together and then just adjust it for whatever activities happened in December. Because I know a lot of people take off, you know, around Christmas time and the first of the year. So that could be some prep work that could potentially be done in advance. Just a reminder, if you have reimbursement grants in your area that have a negative cash balance, it's expected that there would be an accounts receivable. So even if you haven't billed it yet, if we have a negative cash balance in a grant, somebody owes us that money as of year end, even if we haven't billed it. So that will need to be reported. And if you have any accounts receivable that needs to be written off as uncollectible, let's get that done before the end of the year rather than having to make an allowance. Like, if, you know, go ahead and get that uncollectible form filled out and get that routed for signature, and we can go ahead and get that cleaned up. And if you could do that by the 15th, that would be great. Kyle, slide, please. Okay, and I just have a few odds and ends. So as of the first of the year, we're going to again ask that you put in the description of your invoices the year of service or goods that were provided. So I just kind of put some little examples here of where you can see we actually need the period the service was provided. So everybody did a really great job last year of putting a year in there, but we found when the auditors were doing their sampling, that a lot of people were just putting in the wrong year. And so I don't know if it was just a misunderstanding of what it was we were looking for there. So we will do a better job of explaining that when we send out our email with those directions. I kind of want to give a heads up that we need to watch for that actual service period. It's not the invoice date. It's when those services were provided. And they will be rejected in January and February for being incorrect or for missing. So I just want to give you guys a heads up about that. Slide, please. Last week, I sent out information on the PDACN and the SR6 form. I haven't received too many questions, but the ones that I have gotten, I figured I would just cover. One of them is just a reminder that this is only applicable to individuals who are using their Social Security number that you're contracting with. They should have a vendor group of individuals. And so nothing about that email about the PDACN or the SR6 form applies to anyone except individuals. So if you're doing business with a not-for-profit or a corporation, you can just ignore that. But if anytime you do business with an individual, even if they've set themselves up as a sole proprietor LLC, OPERS requires this information, and it is critical that we get it, and very critical that you make sure that if someone is an OPERS benefit recipient, that they reach out to OPERS to ensure that them contracting with us will not negatively impact their benefits that they're receiving. The other thing is optional codes for P-Project invoices. As of January, we're going to start requiring that. So in 2021, it became an option with D365 so that we could capture sub-project information in the GL, but we haven't really enforced it because, it was a little bit of extra work for you guys to have to check it and to add it to the invoice level. But as invoice or as POs are getting used up, we should be down to enough to where we can go ahead and require that. So in January, they will start rejecting invoices if the optional code is missing. Since the invoices GL is pulled from your POs, that is also a check we do at the PO level. So PO approvers should be checking and ensuring that that optional code is there, because then it'll just automatically come over to your invoice for you. It's just those POs that came over from DAX 2012 to D365 that that transition just they didn't have that, and there was no way to technically add them. You'll be hearing from David or Sue regarding your inventories for your fixed assets. So just kind of be on the lookout for that. And then the last thing I have is just a reminder that we have a lot of resources on our auditor's intranet. And I know there's a lot of new people in the city, so there's, I just called out that our contact list is on that contacts page, but it's that Excel sheet at the very beginning, at the very top of the page. And then also that Shannon is the account payable manager, so she would be the one to reach out to for anything to do with warrants or invoices or POs or encumbrances. If you need an expedite or something like that, she's the account payable supervisor. Brandy's the assistant director, so she can also assist with those items, as well as grants and legislation and vendors and things like that. So, and we have this accounting and operations at columbus.gov email, so that rather than sending an email that you're not sure who to talk to about it to 5 different people on our team, just send it to accounting and operations at columbus.gov, along with internal bills, expenditure corrections, and stop pay forms. That's like the designated spot for you to send those, because several of us have access to and monitor that box, so it doesn't matter who might be out for the day, called up sick, or on vacation. We can make sure that everything is handled timely. And then that's also a good place to just send a general question if you're not sure who might be the right person. Kyle, I think that's all that I had, so I guess I am ready to take questions.
Awesome. And Michelle, can you still hear me all right? I apologize. I had to switch headphones while I couldn't hear you for a second, and that's why I didn't get your slide there.
Yeah, I can hear you. You're a little bit tunnely, but I can hear you.
Okay, I'll try to talk about it. So we did have 2 questions that came in through chat. The first was invoices, and they asked if it still needs to be done in black and white. That is no longer a requirement for D365 for attachments. I would say guidance there is to make sure that your attachment is clear and that all of the information can be seen as Michelle had highlighted. So no longer a restriction for black and white for your attachments, for invoices or for any attachment. And then the other one is matching policy going to be the same on all lines. Not sure if you meant purchase order or invoice, but for that, no. If you have a good and a service on the same PO, the matching policy should be according to the good. So you should have a three-way match for a good. You'll still have a two-way match for a service. There is a way that we could apply that matching policy to the invoice, so you can get both on the same invoice. Won't highlight that right now, but we can certainly follow up for whoever may have questions on that process. So with that, you all do have the opportunity to unmute yourselves at fear of potentially having everyone ask a question at once. Does anyone have a question for Michelle? If you feel more comfortable sending it in the chat, you can send it that way, and we can ask that way as well. Okay, we are going to have question and answers again at the end. So if I think Michelle is going to hang with us, so we'll also have a chance to answer questions at the end of the presentation. With that, we'll move forward. So the next part of this is we're going to highlight we're going to highlight purchase order cancellation process, and then some of the inquiries and reports that you can use to identify your documents that are still outstanding and can assist you in cleaning up your division or your department's budget and end of year documents and to assist us in the end of year close. What you're seeing here are training materials for D365. There's one on purchase orders for canceling a purchase order. This does not cover reviewing product receipts on the front end. That's what I'm going to highlight now. We also have the training presentation that covers cancellation slides. Additionally, receiving for how to correct or cancel receipts, and then also a number of the inquiries and reports. Not all of them, but a number of the ones we're going to go over today are covered in greater detail in the inquiries and reports presentation. One specific training that I do want to call out, because this is a new feature that has come out in the last couple, I would say probably about 4 to 6 weeks, maybe be a little bit longer, is our purchase order line bulk cancellation feature. So if you have a purchase order that has 15, 20 lines on it, and you need to cancel that whole purchase order, currently you have to cancel the deliver remainder. I guess previously you had to cancel the deliver remainder line by line for each line. That's no longer the case. For an individual purchase order, you can go in and cancel the deliver remainder for all lines at the same time. So we have a job aid that's been written up that will take you step by step to get through it. And there's also a YouTube video out there on the previous training that was completed on that. We're not going to dive into this feature in detail today, but that is available. I would recommend using it if you're going to be canceling purchase orders for your division. It is in line, so if you previously were going to go to update the line and deliver remainder, underneath it is now the bulk cancel PO lines feature. That will bring you to a new menu where you're going to have an opportunity to cancel and deliver remainder on all of those lines. So this is really just 6 steps of you reviewing, setting up, and submitting your purchase order for cancellation. And then in parentheses there is the status that the purchase order is going to be for each step of the way. So before you're going to do anything to a purchase order as far as changing the status to request a change and place it in draft, you want to check the purchase order line quantity to make sure that you do not have any outstanding product receipts. And that is going to happen while your PO is still confirmed. The second step is if you do see any product receipts that need to be corrected or canceled, is that you go through the process to correct or cancel those product receipts, also doing that while the PO is confirmed.
if you get your PO into a draft status, you cannot correct or cancel product receipts. And you're going to have to go back and submit your purchase order to workflow to get it to a confirmed status to make those corrections then. So once you have taken care of your product receipts, that is when you're going to place your purchase order into a draft status, and you're going to cancel the deliver remainder for the lines or outstanding lines that you have on your purchase order. When you do this, if you have a purchase order that has been partially invoiced, the status will change to invoice. If you have a purchase order that has never been invoiced, the status will change to cancel. That will happen when you have canceled the delivery remainder for your outstanding purchase order lines and you have no product receipts that were still outstanding. If you have missed a product receipt here and you haven't canceled or corrected them properly, you will not see invoiced or canceled as your status. The fifth step is make sure that you update your PO reason code to PO cancel auditor, and then you submit to workflow. So just wanted to provide those 6 steps. We have received a number of questions recently just as far as maybe a little bit of confusion as to where or what the status should be for the purchase order for some of these steps. So I want to highlight checking the purchase order for outstanding product receipts. As I mentioned in the previous slide, so before placing that purchase order in a draft status and canceling deliver remainder, we want to check that there are no outstanding product receipts or lines with a received quantity on them. The best way to do that is from the all purchase orders line or all purchase orders grid or from the individual purchase order itself. You'll go up to the FAST tab and select General Line Quantity. When you select the line quantity, this will bring up this another menu or another screen for line quantity. So any purchase order line that has a quantity in the invoice remainder and received column means that it has a product receipt that's associated with the line, and it needs to be corrected or canceled. So for this example, all the lines have been received, and none of them have been invoiced. So all of these lines would end up needing to be canceled in a product receipt in order for you to cancel this purchase order. If you're going to correct or cancel a product receipt, you are going to go into, so again, you're in your purchase order, you'll go into your header and you're going to select Receive, Journals, and then the product receipt. So this is going to give you your product receipt journal, and it will have all of the product receipts that will be against or traded against the purchase order, and you want to select or highlight the product receipt that you want to correct or cancel. If you have the permissions to correct or cancel product receipt, both correct and cancel will be available to you to make changes. If there has been an invoice against a product receipt, you cannot cancel it. So some product receipts will be partially invoiced or partially relieved by an invoice. You will not be able to cancel that. You'll have to correct it, remove the remainder from that product receipt. So when you go to correct a product receipt, you get a pop-up that says current quantity value is product receipt quantity. The recommended value is ordered quantity. Now this is going to be different than what you usually select when you see this pop up. So when you're correcting a product receipt, you want to select no. The value needs to be the product receipt quantity, since that's what you're trying to correct. You're trying to correct that receipt. So if this pops up, or when this pops up, you want to make sure you select no. If you go to correct a product receipt and this does not pop up for you, you have likely selected do not tell me again. So you're going to want to file a tech desk ticket for D365 support so we can get this changed for you and to get this menu to pop up, or this little sub menu to pop up for you so you can select no. So for canceling a product receipt, this will cancel the receipt and the lines in the packing slip. Do you want to continue? yes, you want to continue. That is the goal of what you're trying to do, is cancel this receipt. So for this, you will select no. If you select no, I'm sorry, you will select yes. If you select no, obviously you are not going to be canceling your receipt. As we've mentioned before, product receipts cannot have any invoices posted against it if you are trying to cancel. So this is only if you haven't invoiced against it. So I'm going to cover the first two inquiries and reports here for year-end cleanup, and then Jody Kronk and Sandeep Sohal are going to help us cover the remaining ones. There may be, or I hope there are a few in here that you haven't seen before that might be useful to you. And then if not, hopefully we can kind of put this together in a way that you can use these together and find some use out of them where you're not finding today. So we have a product receipt report. So one of the most common inquiries we get is, can we tell who created a product receipt? So you don't get to see that information from the product receipts journal when you're looking at it inside the purchase order, but you can run a report that is in the modules procurement and sourcing under inquiries and reports. Important, it's under order posting and it's product receipt. So there's a couple different product receipts that you can end up finding. You want to go under order posting and product receipt. So really this information gives you a little bit more detail than what your product receipt journal does. But the primary thing is that it can provide to you is when a product receipt was created and who created that product receipt. Pretty simple report otherwise, but you can search by purchase order, you can search by who created a product receipt, and then you can also click into the lines and you can see the details for the product receipt itself. So a good basic report, but one that you can get additional information for if you're trying to sleuth out where a product receipt came from, when it was created, or who may have created it. A second report around product receipts, not invoice. Product receipts is called product receipts, not invoice. So this is just going to take one step further, and it's going to allow you to identify those product receipts that don't have an invoice against them. As a standalone report, this has some limited use. It's very basic, again, kind of like product receipts. It's a product receipt that doesn't have invoices posted against it. But what we can do is that we can use exports from maybe outstanding encumbrance inquiry from Excel, and we can paste values back in here. So one thing I wanted to demonstrate involving this report is just a feature of D365. If you are not using, this could be very helpful when you're trying to use these reports or identify documents that you want to further cancel. So what you should see on my screen now is outstanding encumbrances. Jody is going to cover this report in a moment, but I've got ahead and I've run this report for both purchase orders and GBRs, but I've filtered to just identify purchase orders. Just using Rec and Parks as an example, I filtered on object class O2 and it's their general fund, and then further on one of their programs, and we've got 236 purchase orders that are outstanding for this ledger account. If I pop over to the product receipts not invoiced, the not invoiced inquiry and report, what I'll see is this is for every purchase order for every product receipt that has been created and not invoiced. And there is approximately, I think there's about 6,500 of these. So as a standalone, this doesn't give us a lot to work on. But if I take these 236 purchase orders and I export these to Excel, maybe. Okay, well, I think I may still have this saved to show. What I want to show you in this what unfortunate timing right now. Okay, we will keep moving forward on this. What I wanted to demonstrate here is that I filter on purchase orders. Generally, when I'm filtering on purchase orders, I filter on contained. So the operator is contained. But if I'm trying to filter this list down, I'm going to use the operator is one of. And then what I was attempting to do is export the list of purchase orders that I had here to Excel. And then from there, what I was going to do is copy and paste the purchase order values. There's about 85 of them, unique ones that I could paste into this report. And it would have filtered on all 85 values. So it's a lot easier, or it's much easier to filter on a large number of values. You can take them from a Word document. You can take them from an Excel file. You can even take them from an email if someone's listed a number of purchase orders to you there. So with that, I'm going to, since I kind of hit a wall here, I'm going to pass this over to Jody. Yep, and I'm going to work on getting her unmuted for you all.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
You should be unmuted.
Okay,
Yep,
you can hear me?
you.
Perfect. Okay, so this slide is just about outstanding encumbrance inquiry. This is the path to get to it. I'm going to share my screen here in just a minute. And it is going to show you open budget reservations and or purchase orders for the current fiscal year. So, share my screen. And here what we see is my main page. So I'm just going to show you how to just walk through again how to navigate to it. So we're going to General Ledger, Inquiries and Reports, Outstanding Encumbrances. And you get a parameter like this. If you click over here and it looks like this, all you're going to do is click this little expand or collapse caret beside parameters so you can make your choices. What I'm going to demonstrate today is using number 12, which is department division, object class, fund, subfund, and project, which is the legal level of control. You can see there are many, many other ledger string combinations that you can choose from. So pick the one that works best for you. So we're going to do that. In this case, I want to see both. You can limit to just purchase order or budget reservation. If there's a specific purchase order or budget reservation you want to look up, you can do that here as well. You can include or not include finalized documents. In this case, I'm going to toggle no on that. I do want to include carry forward documents. So anything that rolled over from the previous year, I want to see that too, because those are definitely ones that we should be looking at for cleanup. And from date, I'm going to start at the beginning of the year, and then I'm always going to do this to the day I'm running the report. Kind of a quick shortcut, I don't know if you're aware of, but if I want it to today, I can simply type T, and it is going to populate with today's date. And then the other thing, I'm going to toggle this display segments in separate columns. I'm going to toggle that to yes, simply because it makes my filtering a little easier because this is going to run citywide, and then you're going to have to filter down to your department, division, fund, how you are choosing to look at it. So I'm going to hit calculate balances, and this takes a minute to run because it is rather large. So I'm going to flip over here to my other screen where I have already completed that. So you can see all my parameters are still the same. And I've also shrunk down my columns a little bit so we can get it all onto the same screen. I have put some filters in here. I have said I want to see things that begins with PO. We also you should be looking at your GBRs as well, but the main priority is POs. So I'm going to apply that to, I want either documents that start with PO. I have also put in a filter on, I want to see smallest to largest, and I want to see things that are not equal to 0. So I've clicked that in there, and this gives me everything. Ledger account, I have my full ledger string, and then I have each of my segments in a different column. So I can export this, or I can filter first. If I filter, if we just take a look at this one, we can see that there is only, the original encumbrance was $209 and there's only a penny left. I can click and go to the PO from here to get more detail on that. I would recommend exporting this filter for the documents you need to look at, and then work off of that list for clearing up your open encumbrances. Here's one that is definitely just needs cleaned up, and get that canceled, that remaining delivery canceled, so that everything can be finalized. We really don't want to be rolling over cents. And that's what would happen with all of these at the end of the year. Another way to look at things is open purchase order lines. And rather than have flip back to the slide, I'll just go ahead and show you how to get there. So if we start from our home screen, we're going to go to procurement and sourcing. Purchase orders, we're under purchase order follow-up, and open purchase order lines. So this is going to give us more detail about the purchase order itself. It does not give us the general ledger string. So in this case, I am over here. Standard view, this one actually, so this screen comes up pretty good, but I went ahead and ran it anyways. So this is what the standard screen looks like. And it is really set up for inventory, right? It's looking at the quantity ordered, delivery remainder. This is a catch weight, which even most manufacturing facilities don't use, but it's just given us some very basic information. You should all be aware of insert columns, so you can add additional information to this grid to make it more user-friendly for you and to get you the information that you need. I have done that, and this is my default view. And I've added the created date and time, so I can see when these POs were created originally. I have also added matching policy, if it is a project related, and whether there's a purchase requisition. So on created date and time, I've got these set to newest to oldest. So you can go in and, oh, there it goes, newest to oldest. We can see what's still open. I would recommend going oldest to newest and looking at some of these older POs that have been rolling over for quite a while. I'm sure some of these are still valid, but if we get down here, some of them probably are not, and should be investigated. They should show up on the open encumbrance, You can always double check them over here. Like I said, unless you actually go into the PO, you cannot see the general ledger string, but you can get directly into the PO from here, and it is by line. And I guess that's something I should have mentioned on the outstanding encumbrance as well. That is also by line, and you can see that here. So you'll see right here, same PO number. That must be a split distribution, but you can see the line that of the PO that is specifically open. So both of these reports are giving you very detailed information of what is still open and what needs to be taken care of. And that is pretty much all that I have, unless someone has questions.
No, Jody, just want to add, and as an observation, that outstanding encumbrance inquiry kicks out GBRs and purchase order numbers. The open purchase order lines ultimately kicks out purchase order numbers, and then both of those product receipt inquiries that I highlighted as well also kicked out purchase order numbers. So even though these are 4 separate reports, we start with our list with outstanding encumbrances. And we have these purchase order numbers. We can easily run the other 3 and filter the other 3 on our documents based off of outstanding encumbrances. So just wanted to say, keep that in mind. We can always work to the document number. So these other reports can be very useful as we're gathering information, figuring out what receipts needs corrected and canceled, and then what documents ultimately need processed for cancellation.
Absolutely, though, the reports should definitely be used in conjunction with each other.
All right. Well, Jody, with that, I'll share my screen again. Sandeep recently joined our D365 support team, and Sandeep is going to cover the remaining inquiries and reports, and then demo the one accrued sales excluding sales tax report we have. So, here. And I think I have to unmute Sandeep here, so give me 1 second.
Thank you, Kyle. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Thank you. Invoice receipts. This report you can run from accounts payable modules under inquiries and reports. Invoice receipts. This is gonna display the receipts that have been invoiced with corresponding invoice number and the invoice quantity. The only thing is this report can only be run for 1 PO at a time, but that does seem to serve the purpose. This report has been mentioned quite a few times before too, so I'm not gonna dig in to this one. Kyle, next slide, please.
Sandeep, real quick before we jump on that, with invoice receipts, that's a really good tool to figure out. So if you get into wanting to correct or cancel a product receipt, and I know that there are purchase orders that have sometimes dozens of product receipts against them, and it can be tough to figure out where product receipts have been applied. Invoice receipts is a really good report to figure out, kind of where those product receipts have been applied, what invoices they've been applied to, and maybe what product receipts left to be corrected or canceled. Sorry, go ahead.
All right, thanks, Kyle. Accrued purchases excluding sales tax report. This is not new to DAX, but this is something we are just starting to look at. We can run this report under accounts payable module, inquiries and report, invoice, and then accrued purchases excluding sales tax report. So what this does is it displays the list of the open product receipts, and it's gonna list out the vendor name and item numbers, product name, etc. for you, and it will have the date of the receipt, but it does not include the product receipt number. Next slide. So in order to run this report, the two main parameters that we need to look at is the cutoff date needs to be today. And then we need to include the filters for purchase order approval status, and it should not contain the finalized purchase orders because some of those have product receipts which hadn't been wiped, but the delivery remainder was fixed, so they still pop up. So make sure the finalized option is not listed in your criteria. Next slide, please. All right, you can use this report two ways. The first one is once you have identified the purchase orders you need to cancel, you're gonna look at the line quantity and you see there's invoice remainder. So for example, I've picked out this 283710. It has an invoice remainder of 4911. When you go to the product receipt journal, you've got 33 receipts listed in there. And if you're clicking on every single line of those, it's going to take you a while to figure out which one has the correct or the cancel option up here highlighted, so you can your receiver can get that corrected. Or if you are non-receiver and just looking at what receipts have been used, you'll have to go to the invoice receipts and figure that out. This report's kind of cut that work out for you. Kyle, next slide. So what this is going to do is, this is the information the report provides. You got the vendor PO number, you got the purchase order number you're working to cancel. Search for that purchase order in this report, and it will list out all the product receipts that are open. And then you can go to the product receipt journal and pick these product receipts and cancel them. Next slide. So right here, we had 12/22/2021, quite a lot of receipts in there. So I filtered for that. I've got 5 receipts in there. You switch to line view and you can look at the amount up here, which is going to match with your product receipt. You can add the costing voucher column, the very first one in the lines view that you're seeing on the slide, and that voucher number is the identification for that product receipt on the accrued purchases, excluding sales tax report. Now I'm going to share my screen and quickly show you what we got on that report. All right. Can you see my screen?
I can see it.
All right. So this is the CSV format of that report. We do not have the ability to pull that report up via department and division. So I've ran the outstanding encumbrance report and included the department and division in this here. So we've got all of our departments here. So this is, you can use this as a tool to clean up purchase orders by filtering for your department. Let's see up here, Department 30, they've got quite a few product receipts from previous years. Here's a summary of everything that is open as of right now. So we've got 7416 open product receipts, which includes 5524 from this year, but we've got quite a few old ones. We got one from 2016 sitting there, 2017. So some of the big ones, as you can see, they keep piling on with the New Year's. And if 2023, we shouldn't have this data from, we shouldn't have open product receipts for this long of a period. So this report should help you clean up your purchase orders and cancel some of the documents that keep rolling, and identify product receipts if you haven't been able to identify, and that's what's holding up your purchase order cancellation. And I'll stop sharing my screen. Hal, back to you.
So those are our inquiries and reports that we can use to further investigate our documents to try to help clean up at year end here. This was supposed to be quick. We didn't want to dive in and run through each and every inquiry and report or the PO cancellation process, or in Michelle's case, every single deadline and how they apply. So if this breeds questions as we move into year end, please reach out to us. If you have questions about these inquiries and reports, please reach out. We'd like to answer them and have these be as helpful to you to help clean up the system, because it's ultimately most helpful to the auditor's office. As Michelle mentioned, it is quite the effort that occurs, and it occurs during the holiday season here, especially at the end of the year and New Year's Eve. So the better that cleaned up the system is, the easier it is for Michelle and the auditors and her team. I do want to say two last questions that I saw. Michelle did respond to them in the chat, but all contract modifications require legislation, even if the contract was not originally legislated. So I wanted to point that out. There was another question around canceling purchase orders from other users in your division or department. You should have the ability to do that. The users should be able to do that. If you can't do that, it may be a permissions issue, so we'll need to revisit what your permissions are if you're looking to do that, but users should have the ability to cancel purchase orders not created by them. With that, are there any more questions? And I will look in the chat to see if I see any more. Okay, I see. So this is with canceling receipts. So the question was, is it possible to give temporary access to cancel receipts? I guess the short answer to this is, we do have a separation of duties. So if you're paying invoices, you should not also be receiving products and or canceling or correcting products. So if there is a need to cancel product receipts, what we'd probably do is have the permissions of a user reassigned, because we call it temporary, but what we would need is a D365 security request form to make that change. And then once the receipts were cleaned up, we could switch back. So we could do that, but for the period that a user would be cleaning up receipts, they would not be able to be creating invoices at that same time. Cheryl or Michelle or Jody or Sandeep, do either or any of you have any last comments or closing remarks?
One thing I didn't mention was that we will get for real estate tax bills for non-exempt property. Shannon will be sending out that email shortly. I usually send that out around the 1st of November, and that task is being transitioned to her, so she'll get that reminder email out for those interested parties with regards to the real estate tax payment process, but it's unchanged basically from last year, but we'll still get it out for everybody.
Okay. Sounds good. Cheryl said, clean up the POs with a smiley face. I apologize for the technical difficulties on my end a little bit there. We will get this recording out to everybody. If you have questions about adding columns, Jody talked about adding a few columns. Sandeep had mentioned adding a few columns. I was talking about using a different filter operator and pasting values from Excel. If you have questions about that, reach out to us, because that can really, it can leverage these reports, and it can make the work that you're doing much more efficient and easy. So we appreciate your time today, and I guess I'll say on behalf of the auditor's office, thank you in advance for the work that you're going to do in helping clean up the system. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, everyone.